Kyle from Florida, from the command center, your armchair GM. The breaking news of the past couple of days is that the Florida Panthers have sent a bunch of picks over to the Ottawa Senators and have traded for and received Brady Tkachuk, the brother of Matthew Tkachuk. So they're going to be a force in Florida, it appears. To put some background to this entire picture, I'd like to go back to last year when the Florida Panthers were a juggernaut team and they went to strengthen their team by adding a top flight defenseman in Seth Jones. They got him from a trade with Chicago that sent Spencer Knight back to Chicago along with Florida's 2026 first round pick. Well, that's all well and good, but as the season went on this past season, after they won the Stanley Cup, they started having injuries. And while they were a playoff contending team at the beginning of the season, they slowly drifted downward in the standings. And as we get into the new year, they're having more injury problems. And then all of a sudden, we hear from the media that the 2026 first round pick that was given to Chicago, which was looking more and more interesting with the lower standing that the Florida Panthers now had, was announced, unbeknownst to the fan base in Chicago, that the draft pick was top 10 protected. By the trade deadline, the Panthers were in the 8-9 spot in the draft, in the reverse draft order. So the reverse standings had them 8th or 9th worst in the league, and that's the pick they stood to get prior to the draft lottery. So a lot of sadness, a lot of disgruntlement. People in Chicago, the fans, not happy with this sudden news that it was top 10 protected. How something like that goes unnoticed, I guess, can happen if you're making a trade with the team that's won the last Stanley Cup and then went on to win a second Stanley Cup consecutively. If you're trading with that team and Florida just kind of mumbles at the end of the deal, oh, by the way, we want top 10 protection on that pick. Oh, okay. And maybe a couple of the staff from Kyle Davidson heard that, but it wasn't really anything to be concerned about, because how are they going to be a bottom dweller team after being in the finals 2 years in a row and about to be 3? So I could see how it flew under the radar. Maybe even all the staff didn't know the details of the draft rule. But be that as it may, nobody owned up to anything as far as explaining to the fans why we're just hearing this now. But we found out February, March, April, we understood that draft pick was top 10 protected. And Florida went on a large dismantling of their team through injuries. I think anybody that stubbed their toe was considered injured, and they were not in the lineup. Instead, they emptied their farm team and played more than half of their squad as rookies. And as far as they're concerned, the players themselves did a good accounting of themselves. Of course, this was a big opportunity for them to show what they could do. But Florida still missed being in the favorable place for Chicago at pick 11 or 12, which would have given that pick to Chicago and would have been a massive, massive victory, considering a team that was typically getting the 32nd pick in the draft was going to end up with something down close to 11 or 12. But as it turns out, they lost just enough to be 3 points within the margin of error to be a top 10 draft team. In other words, in the reverse standings, they were in the bottom 10 the bottom 10 of the actual standings and the top 10 of the reverse standings, 3 points out of the 11th or 12th spot. So now fast forward beyond the end of the season to beyond the draft lottery. Florida's at pick 9. I believe they were at pick 8 and they backed up one spot when San Jose jumped from, I think, from the 9th pick all the way up to the 2nd pick. So here we are, Florida at 9. Chicago waits till next year to use the pick. And now we hear that the Senators have gone ahead and traded their captain, Brady, to Florida for 3 first-rounders, 2 of them this year, and a second-rounder. So that's the news. That's what happened. It's not true to say no one saw it coming, because there was rumblings about the fact that Brady didn't want to play anymore in Ottawa, but it wasn't maybe said in those terms, but there were a lot of things pointing in that direction. And the question in my mind just becomes, was this all a coincidence? All these things that lined up in order for Brady to become a Panther? Or was there more to it than that? I know some teams will take it to the limit to do what they have to do to snatch those Stanley Cups, and to throw in a top 10 protection at the end of a deal, right toward the end of a deal, to the point where the team that is receiving that pick doesn't even realize it, and then to completely crash, your team completely crashes and ends up in the upper top 10 of the draft. And then immediately following that, you conveniently take that 9th overall pick as a cornerstone of a trade that gets Matthew's brother, Brady, on the team. Nah, they didn't plan all that out. That wasn't planned out. There's no way they would have planned out. But if you want to see something interesting, watch the exit interviews of the coach and the GM standing together, talking about the season on the exit interviews from the 25-26 season. Those are interesting because they look very uncomfortable explaining to the fan base what took place. And I just find it, laughable that all this stuff was coincidence. And it just goes to show you some general managers, some teams will go to do whatever it takes to get those cups. Much like Vegas, they're notorious for grabbing players and fitting them under the cap somehow and getting rid of other players unceremoniously, just dropping players that makes it more convenient for them to get the players they want. And they end up with a mighty team. Just, it seems like every playoff run, there's the Vegas Golden Knights right up there battling away, trying to get another cup. Anyway, I know it's a lot of sour grapes, but it just goes to show you it's dog eat dog out there. And if you're not of a similar vein doing your job as a GM, you're probably not going to succeed to where the fan base wants to go, which is win a cup. Now, as far as Brady Tkachuk goes, him going to the Panthers, well, we'll see how that works out. I'm sure they'll have a lot of fun playing the upcoming season. They still need a goalie, so that's something that is so far unresolved, and I'm sure they'll do something. Remember now, and they've shown that they'll go to some extra thoughts here for Chicago fans. Craig Button was on Frankly Hockey today which is almost over. It's 11 o'clock in the evening, my time right now as I record this. But back at around the noon hour, Frankly Hockey aired live, and they had Craig Button as their guest. And as he spoke about the fact that the Senators did not get a player back in this deal for Brady, a bunch of picks but no player, they have holes to fill. And Craig offered the idea that the thing for the Senators to do is to look at rebuilding teams that are tearing down or rebuilding teams that are overpopulated with assets and see if you can't move the picks for players with those teams. The Blackhawks have a lot of assets. Many of them haven't arrived yet to the team. Many have, but I'm not sure Kyle has players currently on the roster that he wants to move. Particularly, there are a few, but the kind of player that the Senators would be looking for would be forwards that are going to make a difference, be able to play in the top six. And the only name that comes to mind as far as that is concerned for Chicago would be Nick Lardis. He's got a lot of potential. He had 20 goals last year. I should say he played at a 20-goal pace last year. So you could figure a full season, he might come up with 25 goals this season in his second year in the NHL. And last year was a partial year, so this would be a full year. Last year was exactly half a season, 41 games, and he had 10 goals, so that was a 20-goal pace. He also scored, I believe, 19 goals in the AHL before he came up to Chicago. So, he was right around a 30-goal scorer for his first pro year. Pretty impressive. I mention his name only because he's 5'11". We have many forwards at 5'11" or 5'10" or 5'9", and so a smaller player with his kind of pedigree would likely be one of the better chips the Blackhawks could throw out there. There's also Merrick Van Acker, who had a great year in the OHL. I think he was within one goal of leading the league in goal scoring. He's a potential fit for some team looking for a young, high-profile asset prospect. That's pretty much it. So I'm not thinking that the Blackhawks are going to get that 9th overall pick because I don't see them giving away what the Senators would want. So those are my thoughts on the latest news about the Panthers, the Senators, and the Blackhawks, and the angle of trying to get the 9th overall pick, which would, by the way, that would be ironic if Chicago ended up with it, because Chicago should have ended up with it in the first place. But because they didn't, they're going to get the unprotected 2027 first-round pick from Florida. And that's the season coming up. And I think Florida plans on being, no worse off than the 25th team in the reverse standings. So, oh well, Chicago. I think they got you on this one. That's it for me for this time. More coming at you every day. We're going to keep firing out these videos, and I'm going to do a lot with roster building for next season ahead of the draft, and we'll see if any of my ideas come to pass. It's going to take in free agency as well, so the draft is a small part of it. The main thing is a couple of trades and 2 or 3 good free agents. What I'm thinking is going to transpire, and I'll produce rosters to show what that would look like as we move into the early part of July. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. That's the only way this channel is going to draw an audience, and I'd like to see it grow as fast as possible. And I appreciate it, and have a good day, and thank you very much.